Hello, Doña County. My name is Anita Skipper. I am the Public Information Officer for Doña County, and we welcome you to another episode. And this time, does anybody recognize this gentleman sitting next to me? This time, we are joined by none other than the director of our detention center here in Doña County, Mr. Bryan Baker. Welcome to the show, the episode, the Facebook Live, all of that. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. We know you are extremely busy, and so we want to take some time today to just get to know you a little bit better, talk about the work you do at the detention center, and also take some questions. I know personally that this is probably the most frequently asked set of questions we receive in our different formats, either on our website or on our social media pages. People are often asking about things going on at the detention center, so let's have fun. How about it?
All right, sounds great.
All right, so let's just get to know you a little bit. How long have you been director, and what were you doing before then?
I became director in March of 2020.
Okay.
March 7th to be exact.
Tough time.
I had 4 days before it was public health emergency for COVID, but it just meant that I got to get a running start.
That would be it. Hair on fire, all of that. Well, trial by fire.
Yeah.
Seriously. Okay. March, 2020.
Before that, since June of 2020 or 2001, I've worked at the detention center. I've worked my way up from cadet, officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and then finally director.
That's wonderful. Okay, so you guys, we have the right person here today because you really have seen it all from every level. So I imagine that's what makes you an effective director as well.
I would hope so.
You would hope so.
I know what it's like for officers and everybody else in there, so I try to take their perspectives in line. But to be honest, I also through the years have come to acknowledge and respect the point of view that the detainees have, because I spent a good period of time as an officer working in visitation, and I got to see the impact that incarceration has on the family members on the outside and how truly gut-wrenching it can be for a lot of families, and especially the children.
That is a wonderful perspective. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I think sometimes we miss that. I think maybe even those of you who are listening, you may see, oh, we're working in this building, we're working at the detention center, we're working wherever, but there's a human side to this. We can't just come in and take on a role and it comes off at 5 p.m. We are humans, we have families, all of that. So I love that you said that because they're only with you for a period of time. But just in you saying that, it says to me that you try to add a level of compassion to your work, even though it can be a difficult situation for the detainees, the families, all of that. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so been there a while, nothing new. Nothing I'll ask you today will throw you off then, because we'll see. I'll work on it.
It is such a wide-ranging department that there's always something new. So.
Okay, so let's talk about the work you all do at the detention center. You started talking about that human element, that compassion that's needed in the role for the families. And I'm sure those who are listening would be really delighted to hear that. So detention center, I somehow have a brush with the law for whatever reason, and I am detained by a law enforcement officer. That's when I come to the detention center?
Yes.
So talk to me about the work you're doing. I know I'm a detainee now, so I'm there. What kind of services do you all offer, particularly some that people would be surprised to even know about?
Well, the main thing that we offer that is probably above and beyond what you'd find in just about any place is our medical and mental health services are exceptionally robust. We have medical providers, mental health providers, we have a psychiatrist, we have nurse practitioners in mental health, that they see our detainee population and address a lot of those issues that they haven't even been addressing out in the community. Oftentimes, you get a faster response for those type of issues in our facility than you would ever see out in the community, and generally a higher level of care. It may not be the same that you see in your doctor's office because you kind of get to choose what you want to do with that. At the detention center, we have set rules and we have a certain formulary that may not be the same that you have on the outside, but for the most part, the care is equivalent or better than you will find on the outside.
Wow, okay, so let's definitely unpack that. How did Doña County even come to offer that kind of service? Because you said it's not typical. So if I go up the road somewhere, is this necessarily offered? Or if I go to another state, how did that even come about?
We learned about it painfully because you go back 20 years and the county had maybe one doctor, a couple nurses, a couple LPNs or med techs that were around. So the standard of care you would get for even mental health was from just a family practitioner. That was insufficient, and we eventually had some issues at the detention center that made us realize that it wasn't enough. It caused a lot of problems, and we eventually somewhat were forced to look at a better way of doing it. The county doesn't have enough experience in running medical departments and everything else like that, so it was, especially the detention center, had no idea. I mean, you don't hire a director for their medical experience, you hire them for their correctional experience or social work experience or something like that. So we looked around and there was various different companies and we put out a request for proposal for several of them, and we selected one that would provide the level of care that we felt we needed. And over the years, it has actually grown. Where we were originally when we first contracted out our medical services to where we are now is at least double what we were previously offering, and they have their work cut out for them because we generally run between 600 and 900 detainees that are generally high utilization individuals. They're not the standard individual that doesn't ever see a doctor for 5 years. They frequently have issues that need to be addressed, and they keep up on that.
Wow, that's a great partnership. And just so to remind everyone, if you are watching the show and maybe this is your first time and you're not sure how this process works, we are inviting you to submit your questions. We'll try to get to as many of those as possible, but we'll do so at the end. So keep your questions rolling in. I'll continue the conversation with Director Baker, and then we'll start tackling some of those questions at the end.
Right.
So this is fascinating. I love that this service is offered because you don't often hear of this. What you do hear is someone has had a brush with the law and they are detained for whatever period of time, and the assumption of guilt often is there, or that the person is just criminal-minded and there is no reason for the behavior. And so the fact that you all have partnered that mental health piece with their incarceration or them being detained says that you recognize that nothing just happens, that
Right.
we usually arrive somewhere through certain levels of something that's happened or trauma or something.
Right.
And so does this organization that you partner with, how do you know if you're being successful? Are they keeping recidivism rates, or how do we know if we're reaching them? We have the service there. How do we know if we're effective?
The hard part we have is we can get most individuals, even with significant mental health issues, stable while they're at the detention center. The breakdown often occurs after they exit the detention center. The community itself has a lower level of service capacity than is needed in Doña County. That's not a secret. Everybody's known that. We've been working with it. That's why we have the Crisis Triage Center. We have somewhat partnered with the Crisis Triage Center so that upon discharge, we try to direct them to the Crisis Triage Center because they have a lot of connections in the community to help maintain the treatment that the individuals have. Mm-hmm. So that way, it's not just they walk out the door and, okay, I'm running out of medication now. I have 7 days. Where do I go? They actually have a tie over to the community providers.
That's important. definitely has to be a network of care. So that's good. And we will be talking with the director of HHS and some of the members from the Crisis Triage Center soon. So make sure that you all connect and watch that episode, because I'm really looking forward to just learning more about the CTC or Crisis Triage Center's work, how they are continuing to partner with you and other organizations in the community to help us when we all need a little hand up at that time, at a certain time. So we talked about what happens with the detainees. Is there a certain period of time that someone is detained with you, or is it just until?
When they first come in, it is basically until they see a judge, or on certain types of cases, we have the ability to release them on their own recognizance prior to seeing a judge. Other charges, they have to appear in front of a judge for arraignment. If they're not released at that point, then they're ours until they're fully adjudicated or until another order of the court. That ranges in time. It could be 5 days, it could be a year, it could be more, depending on the charges.
Okay, so that's not something that we determine. It's
Right.
based on their case. Okay, good to know. All right, so what other questions do I have before we open it up? Because it appears that there are quite a few questions coming in, which is great for us. Okay, so we've talked about some of the services provided. I'd like to tackle some of the frequently asked questions, because these are things that I see coming through my inbox a lot. If someone's watching and they're not sure how to make this happen, so hopefully this will answer some questions for you all. After COVID, or I won't even say after COVID, we're in the endemic phase, right?
Well,
So-
for us, we're still in the pandemic phase.
Oh, really?
It takes a lot longer to peel things back for a congregate housing unit than it is for the general community.
Okay.
Because we are just now looking at relaxing some of the mask requirements for the staff in areas that they don't have a lot of interaction with quarantine or isolated detainees. But the rest of the community has had the option to go without masks for a significant period of time.
And this requirement comes from where?
Generally, it comes from the public health order that's put out by the Department of Health.
Okay.
And so I monitor that as it changes. We don't jump at it really fast, because when it's relaxing, we want to make sure we have everything done right and in place before we move on it. But if it tightens up, usually before I notice that a public health order is going to say we need to go to tighter restrictions, I've already moved that way. I monitor the number of cases of COVID in the facility and in the community at least every other day. And if I see an uptick, I'm going to act to protect the detainees and my staff. So when I relax things, I let them know it's tentative. And if the community changes, then I will be changing immediately thereafter.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because I know we're in a period where this is new to all of us and we're just trying to figure it out. And so we do spend a lot of time watching trends and having to make some difficult decisions for the greater good.
Yep.
So hopefully, so I can't imagine what that's like, especially in an enclosed environment, like an ongoing enclosed environment.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've talked about, so then if you're still having certain restrictions and still operating in a sort of a pandemic environment, what's your visitation process like at this point?
Visitation is done by video. You can find the link on our website, on DoñaCounty.org's website, and under Detention Center, you can see where it has the link to register a smart device or a computer to do video visitation. And we offer one free video visit per week. And then you can actually sign up for as many other visits as you want, but those are for a cost. So not a prohibitive cost, but those come with a cost. Prior to the pandemic, detainees were limited to one visit per week, and that was it.
No cost option, no extras. So.
If you did it by video, it had a cost. If you didn't do it by video, you could come to the facility, but it was still one visit per week. Now we've basically opened it up, extended the hours, and opened it up to as many as you want. So, I mean, realistically, if you had the funds and you wanted to, you could have a visit with your loved one by video every single day of the week.
Well, that's good to know. And if you all, again, that's DoñaAnaCounty.org. and go to departments and choose the detention center, and you'll see the information about visitation as well as the hours and all of that. So that's good. In a tough time where many of us, even on the outside, were unable to see our loved ones, the fact that people can choose for a cost to see their loved ones more often, I think that's a nice compromise in this
Right.
situation, especially with the restrictions that are going on. Okay. We also receive questions from people asking, maybe they have not heard from a loved one. And so I think sometimes one of the first things they do is, let's see if they've been arrested. I mean, it makes you think, because, I mean, think about it. We call the hospital, we call the jail, we call whatever numbers we need to if we have not heard from our loved one. And so I know we have a resource that allows people to search. So you want to tell people, if they're curious about whether or not the person is in our custody, where would they look?
They would go again onto the county website under Detention Center, and one of the options on the side of the screen is Inmates Online. If you click on that, it will list all the currently in custody detainees. It won't tell you if they were here and have already left, but it'll tell you if they're in custody currently.
And it is it's current time. So if 5 minutes from now I check it and it happened 5 minutes ago, how often is that updated?
It's very frequent. It's either 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
It is very frequently
That's
done.
pretty accurate.
That is all
Okay.
done through the IT department, but it's a real quick refresh for them.
Oh, very good. Okay. So for those of you who use our input at DoñaCounty.org and you often have questions about whether or not someone is there at the detention center, just know that we have that resource on our website at DoñaCounty.org. Go to departments and there's an inmate search link. All right, good to know. Now, we've talked about the detainees, and I know this is not like an office job where you just go and sit and you leave at the end of the day. Obviously, this is a 24-hour operation, and you require just the commitment and dedication of your staff who obviously are just doing a yeoman's job at just taking care of the facility, doing whatever needs to be done. So I want to give some time to talk about those employees in such a difficult environment where you're managing the oversight of so many people who've come there for different reasons, who have maybe some needs for assistance with the mental health or substance use or whatever. You never know what someone's facing when they come in. How do you support your staff in this to keep them strong, or whatever is needed for this kind of role? Or even, do you have to, or do they just come through the door built for it?
Most of them, it takes a very special type of individual. That is one of the reasons why we have such a hard time maintaining staff. It's the people we have are great. They carry the burden of being a counselor, a social worker, law enforcement officer, everything. And part of the time, they're even a medical responder because they're the first one on scene when somebody has a medical crisis. So it takes a special set of individuals because you are technically in custody 12 hours a day for your shift. You don't see the sun really unless you go outside to take a break. You're in there, you're walking the hallways, you're in the housing units, you're talking with the detainees, you're making sure that all their needs are met. So it takes a special group of individuals to do it. As far as support, I don't know necessarily what else we can do for them. I mean, a lot of them work so much that when they get away, they want to take their time away. We do have like an annual Officer Appreciation Week type thing, and of course the county offers the Employee Assistant Program for individuals that might need counseling because of something they've seen. But for the most part, they're a very tough, resilient group of people that do a lot of work and mostly under the radar.
Right. I never thought about that because EAP, I think, sometimes goes overlooked, underused, utilized, because it is a resource that, depending on what you're seeing and experiencing, we really should be tapping into it. I'm not sure, for those of you who are watching, if you have that as an option, please use it. Because from what you've said, if I'm working 12 hours a day, I don't know how much time I'm going to take to then go and do something else, or I don't even know how much time you have to even take a break and say, oh, let's do some development here or there. But still, is there development opportunity available in your line of work? I mean, what would one do for employee development when they work at a detention center?
We offer whatever trainings come available. New Mexico Counties has several trainings that come up as they come available, and we have the ability to send people to. We will send them to it. Of course, the county has an educational assistance program that if they wanted to go to school while they're working, they can do that and get some of their tuition money back. And now that the governor's made tuition free, it should make it easier for a lot of individuals. That's how I progressed. I came into the detention center with just some college but no degree, and through that program, I eventually got 2 bachelor's degrees and 2 master's degrees.
Okay. Oh, impressive. You've been in school forever.
I wanted to, the first couple of years, I did not think director was in my future. After a while, I saw things I would like to change and make better, so I devoted some effort to try to become the best possible candidate for that position when it came available.
Now, I can't just leave that out there. Like, give me an idea. Nobody else is listening. So just what kind of things were you thinking at the time from the position you were in? Because I know it's always easy when you're not in the position to point out things you think could be better. But what kind of things were you thinking, oh, I'd like to see that be different? Or as a person who's a cadet or whatever, this would be beneficial if this were in place. What kind of things?
A lot of it has been detainee focused. I mean, like I said before, we had limited visitation. There was no real reason for it. There was always the technology out there to offer more. We just didn't choose to do that. I was like, well, let's explore what we can do, see if we can do it in a cost-effective manner. Over time, we found out actually we could do it, and it actually doesn't really cost us anything. Some initiatives were started under prior administrations, like the tablets and stuff like that, and we've just looked to expand it, to where they have more opportunity for entertainment or interaction with the families through the tablets, those type of things. It's just trying to make sure that we can make it better for everybody as cost effective as we can. So anytime I have the opportunity to look at something and go, well, why don't we do this? I am a big why not instead of a why. I try to make sure we're doing things in advance of being forced to do it. So that's one of the things I work well with Jamie Michael over at HHS is she comes up with ideas and I'm like, well, let's try it.
You're right. Okay. Well, that's good to know. And it's nice to see that you're now in a position to be able to implement some of those. Okay, so continuing on the employee side and their dedication, the work, the EAP, the different educational options, is that open for everyone?
For the most part, yes. I don't think it's blocked for anybody.
So anyone who says, look, I'd like some development, I'd like to improve in my career or strengthen this, it's just a process where they say, I'm interested. Okay, very good.
It's been difficult during COVID because for a while there, out-of-state travel would cause problems. If I sent you out of state, then when you came back, you had to quarantine. Well, I needed you back on shift. So there's been a lot of things that have kind of been put on hiatus for the pandemic. We used to have a lot of volunteers come in and they'd run GED classes, NA, AA, religious classes, all those kind of things. But with the pandemic not being able to identify whether or not they have been exposed, were potentially infectious, we had to stop that. That was kind of an industry-wide thing that happened. We discontinued a lot of that. And so a lot of the trainings that were going on were infrequent at best, or I couldn't spare people for that. Now that we're slowly coming out of it, I'm looking forward to being able to send people to more of those trainings.
Very good. Well, I'm sure it's been a difficult time for a lot of people. Would you say morale in this last 2.5 years has been different at a lower level than what you saw before we went into the pepperoni, or without saying pandemic?
It varies. I will tell you this much. People love the people they work with, and oftentimes they like their job. Sometimes they love it, sometimes they don't like it. And it just depends on the stimulus of the day. If you have something that's bothering you, of course, you're going to be like, why am I here? But oftentimes you look in the back. When we had our most recent New Mexico County's detention audit for reaccreditation, one of the things the auditors noted when they went through is your staff is generally very happy, the happiest we've seen in many of the facilities we've ever been to, and they're really engaged with anybody. They're polite, they're nice, they talk around and everything like that. That's not indicative of a huge morale problem, but I understand there's things we have to work on to make it better for them too.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of mentoring or coaching available for your staff? Or even for you? I mean, is that even available in a 24-hour, 24/7, 365 operation?
When they first come out of the academy, they go into a field training officer program where we have assign a senior staff member so that's with them for 4 weeks. As they promote up, we were working on, before that was the extent of it. And then if you promoted to sergeant or lieutenant or above, there was no additional real training you got except for some of the standard HR-related supervisor courses that you had. We've now implemented FTO courses for the next ranks that go up. So if you promote up to sergeant, you will go through an FTO program where you'll be assigned with another senior sergeant who will show you what you need to do, because it's not a trial by fire, just go in there and figure it out, because that leads to mistakes. And one thing that is results in really poor outcomes at the detention center is when you make a mistake because no one bothered to tell you. So as long as you have the information, most people make really good decisions.
Okay. And so I don't know the ranks. So explain the ranks to me. If I walk through the door, I apply for a position, what do I come in as?
You would be a detention cadet or officer trainee.
Okay. And then what do I need to do to progress to whatever the next level is?
You will complete the academy and the 4-week FTO program that occurs right afterwards, and then you'll become a official officer at that point.
So FTO, field training officer?
That's technically the FTO program. You're the person going through the program, and you have a field training officer assigned to you.
So now I'm an FTO.
Yep, then you're
And
just a
then
regular
I have
officer.
to go through another training and test. Every time I progress, I'm
Yep.
trained and tested.
Every promotional opportunity has a testing, interview, background, and then you will go into a training program of whatever duration. Even with captains, we haven't had to do that because we haven't had a lot of turnover with captains, but we've done it all the way up to lieutenant. So any new lieutenant we've had has been assigned to a senior lieutenant that has been able to show them what they need to do.
Do you identify people for promotion, or do they position themselves for promotion?
It is merit-based. We
Oh.
post it. I try not to get involved in the process very much, if at all. I let the results speak for themselves. They take the written test, their score is their score. They go into an oral interview, and their score is their score, and then they're ranked. And in general, I'm going to err on the side of the merit rather than any preference that I may have.
Right. That keeps the bias, any
Right.
sort of bias out of the process. I can understand that. Okay, so let's talk about, you were talking about retention and captains not having a lot of turnover. I know one of the things our office has been working with you on, and it's getting a lot of buzz on social media, is your current hiring effort. So let's talk about what positions are you looking to fill? What is most critical right now?
Most critical is the officer position. So we're hiring for detention officer trainee, as many as we can get.
Okay.
And we've got a pretty good hiring incentive for those individuals interested in applying. If they have zero experience, like I'm just coming out of high school, I'm 18 years old, I have a diploma, I can apply, and if I make it through the process and complete my first year, I will have earned another $4,000. If I have prior corrections experience, that amount goes up to $6,000, and it's split into 2 payments. One right after they get out of the academy and complete the FTO program, and the other one right before they complete their first year.
Okay. Now, when we started posting these hiring efforts, of course, we had people come in and say, "Oh, I'm already there. Do I need to quit and reapply so that I can get this incentive?"
Yeah.
So let's talk about just the nature of incentives, because I think we all see it in every line of work. It's like, have you ever worked in a job where you felt like, I make this amount, but the new person came in and made more because it's based on demand? So how have you responded to your officers and other staff who said, "Hey, man, where was the money when I came on board?"
Well, and all I can tell them is it's a product of the circumstance. I mean, it will be there and then it'll go away. So the person that gets hired after that program ends, they don't get it. So that's why I really strongly encourage people to do it now. If you're just thinking about it, put in for it, make a decision. Because if you don't do it now and you're like, well, maybe in 3 months I'll be interested in doing it, that program may not be around in 3 months.
Yeah. And that's so good, because you're right. The circumstance warrants it. You already talked about it's been a challenging time. And not to mention, it takes a special person to even do this work to begin with. So you do have those people who've been there, who've weathered through the pandemic and continue to stay on board. Are they having any supervisory incentives? Are you looking to build leaders through this process where you incentivize them as well, or is it just entry level?
We are slowly working at, the hard part we have right now is our staffing levels are lower. So filling in various ranks is going to be a slow process, because you have to have the officers replacement be able to, that will replace eventually people who climb up. So it's a little bit different when you're looking at the difference between sergeant and lieutenant, because a lieutenant can operate in the capacity of a sergeant, but oftentimes sergeants are acting in the capacity of officers. So if you're pulling out a whole bunch of officers to promote them to sergeant, because your staffing so low, all they're really doing is being an officer. They don't have a chance to succeed, but they're held to the standard of a sergeant. So then what happens when they make mistakes? Because they didn't have the support that they needed at that point. So we're working on it. We're going to be filling different positions for quite some time. The goal is hopefully to be able to fill in the officer positions to a pretty high level, and then we'll be able to start looking at all the other positions and get those filled in.
And just without me having a lot of experience in what you do, I'm just thinking, just like any other company we all work in, if there's no one to supervise, there's no need for a supervisor.
Right.
So I get that. So you're trying to make sure you have your foundation built right now through the incentive program. And then, hey, if you guys are there, if you're working, not just at the detention center, but any kind of organization, find great candidates to fill those officer positions, which allows you to move toward being able to elevate your people if that's
Right.
if that's warranted. So I can understand that. Okay, so what happens when they get in the door? Because we've already talked about this can be a challenging field and occupation. What kind of, have you even gotten to the point where you can look at ways to retain that group? Do we make sure, if I already work there, you say, Anita, stay away from these new guys and don't tell them about your challenging situation so that we can keep them longer? What's the process there?
Well, what they do when they first come in is they go through a good 2 weeks of training on how to work in a pod. Those are the control stations. They have very limited or no detainee contact, physical contact. They'll deal with them through the intercoms, opening doors, sending them to medical or wherever else like that. And they will be in that capacity until we have sufficient numbers to run in a full academy. At that point, they come out of that, go through the whole rest of the training, whether it's TASER, OC, defensive tactics.
What's OC?
That is pepper spray, basically.
Oh, pepper spray. Okay. I just want to make sure we don't lose anybody because I didn't know that.
It is not habit forming at all, and neither is TASER, because that's not habit forming either. But most people have to be exposed to it when they're getting trained, and most people decide that that's enough, that they've learned that.
Teach me one time.
If you aim a TASER at me, I guarantee you will see me fall on the ground just as well as if it was a gun. I'd be like, I have no desire to play with that.
One time is enough.
Yep.
One time is enough. Okay. So this has been really informative. I love doing these interviews because not only do I get to learn a lot about people I work with, but just about how it all comes together. Because I think outside of these doors, people don't realize that we really are one hand functioning. There's nothing that any of us do in a vacuum.
Right.
So when you need something, you're calling us, you're calling HHS, you're partnering with all of us. And so I hope the community understands that clearly this is not an easy job. And I don't know that in leadership you will ever make everyone happy. But what I do hear from you is that your heart is there to improve conditions.
Right.
It's been a difficult period, particularly with the pandemic, and you're optimistic about what we can do in the future to not only attract new officers, but retain the ones we have.
Right.
And I think, I don't know what else, I mean, is there anything else you would offer to that?
Most of that for officers and sergeants, that's negotiated with the union. So it's whatever is negotiated between the county and the union. So it's not a one-sided thing by any stretch of the imagination. It requires a lot of collaboration and negotiation to see where we are going to go from here.
Yeah. Well, I think this incentive program is a step in the direction, at least of saying where your priorities are, and that is making sure that we are fully staffed as much as possible. So, okay, so before I move to any questions we have, I want to give you the opportunity to answer this question. Is there something that you think that people maybe are not clear on, misunderstand about the work you do?
I think a lot of people don't understand that we're not there for punishment. We are there solely to maintain the welfare and health of the people under our control and custody, because we don't decide punishment. That's the court's purview. We try to make it the best for everybody. We acknowledge the fact that these are individuals, moms, dads, grandparents, children, and so we do our best within reason. We have to maintain security and control. So, I mean, just like as a parent, if your child is acting up, then we have to do whatever we have to do to make sure we can maintain control. But it's not by our choice. We're never going to go enter into those type of situations without cause. So, I mean, they really need to understand that we are really out there to look out for the best interests of the detainees as well. That we're just not out there to make their life miserable.
And I would imagine by doing that, you're also looking out for your staff, because that can be a volatile situation without having some sort of order.
Right.
So I can understand that. Okay. Well, let's move into, I think I might have addressed quite a bit of the questions, but let's go ahead, and I see one question. I might need a little bit more elaboration on this one, but how do you deal with food shortages is the question.
We contract our food services with Trinity Services, and they have done a remarkable job at sourcing food for the menu that they prepare. They have a nutritionist that sets the menu and makes sure everybody's getting the right caloric content and variety of foods. And they have been really good at identifying issues with the supply chain and making adjustments that are nutritionally equivalent. So we haven't had too many problems. The prices have gone up, but for the most part, in terms of actual food for the trays that go out to the detainee population, we have not had a significant issue.
Never asked anybody this, but I'm curious now that I have you here. Can you get seconds? How does that work?
No, but and this is a shameless
Everybody
promotion.
doesn't have the same appetite, you know?
This is a shameless promotion for our vendors that we have. There's a commissary that they can order additional food, and actually they can order hot meals from the kitchen, and it's a variety of things. Sometimes it's pizza, burgers, just different things that they offer. That they can order hot meals separate from the regular ones. So there's ways of, if you're hungry or you want extra meals, there's ways of doing it. Okay. And there's ways for the family members to either put money on accounts or buy special packages for commissary to deliver to their loved one, and those are available on our website.
Okay, very good. Do we have any other questions coming in? All right, well, not bad, right? Painless?
Nope. I might even be encouraged to do this again.
You're on. I'm sure we will have other opportunities to do this. So the reason we do these shows is to allow you all to peek behind the curtain and really see the human element to the work we do, but also the hard work and the many people that may be faceless in times that work on behalf of the residents of the county. And so before I wrap up this time with Director Baker, I want to give you all the opportunity to, if you don't have questions about this particular topic, let us know how we're doing. Do you like these lives? Do you like the ability to ask questions? Even if you're watching this on replay, feel free. If you have a question, jot it down. We'll get back to you. We still monitor our posts and we'll respond. But who would you like to see? What would you like us to talk about? Because my goal is to continue to use this platform to educate you on processes that happen in the county so that hopefully it can cut down on maybe some of the misunderstanding, the frustrations that happen if you're not quite educated on how to use our services, so that we can have just a seamless process when you need us or when you need to access something. So that's what we're using this for. So this is about you. So we need to hear from you. Do you like this platform? Who would you like to see us talk to? What kind of topics would you like? That'll help us plan for future ones, future shows. But in the meantime, join me in thanking Director Baker for this time with us. And thank you so much for the work you do, for the commitment to the detainees as well as your staff. And you guys stay well. And hopefully from our hiring efforts, as well as this video and anything else we do in the future, you will have a lot of people who say, you know what, I want to serve my community in this way. Of course, they can make a living, but like you said, it's obviously not just about the money. People go into this because they're cut out for this kind of work. So if you have heard something in this video that you think, oh, you know what, I could do that, or that resonates with me on how he feels about protecting the people there or promoting through the ranks and even how he promoted from within, then reach out. Click on the links about hiring. If you have some questions, you can always ask us. But I know they're looking for great people. We want to have great people in this community serving the other great people in Doña County. So thank you so much, Director.
You're welcome.
I'm sure I will see you soon.
Yep.
And that concludes this episode. So I will just say goodbye, Doña County. Thank you all for watching.